Hi, friends. Welcome back to Unmasking with Cindy and Sarah. We are here in the new year, 2025. Woohoo! We are very excited to be here and to be back with all of you. Before we go into our podcast today and what we have in store for the year, we wanted to also send our thoughts and good vibes to everyone in California. Our hearts go out to them. The fires there are just so tragic. Watching all of that, the lives lost, all of the homes that have just been affected, the trauma of the people having to be there watching it, not knowing what is happening, whether they have to evacuate. From a mental health perspective, just know that this is, a very tragic event, and our hearts go out to all of them. And we know that this is a new year, and a lot of times people hope for, lots of wonderful beginnings, but this year has started out really intense for a lot of people and really tragic for a lot of people. And so we wanted to be really mindful going into today's episode of honoring them and just letting them know that our hearts go out to all of them.
Yes, absolutely. It's just a shame, such a shame,
Hmm.
regardless of status or, how much you had. It's not even about that. It's about the loss. Anybody that walks
Hmm.
through something like that, that's extremely traumatizing. And so sending all the good vibes. And, for
Yes.
today, we've titled this episode New Year, No Expectations.
Yes.
And I really think that's appropriate, Sarah, to
Hmm.
to call it that, because I don't know about you, but in the years past, I can go into the new year with a laundry list of things to do and ways to accomplish and achieve. And I am starting this year with a totally different outlook. I don't know. How
Yeah.
about you?
Same. I didn't even eat black eyed peas. I don't care.
I
I've
didn't
eaten them
either.
every year of my life for
Really?
41 years. And yeah, obviously hasn't gone too well. So this year I'm trying something different. No expectations, not eating the black eyed peas. And I'm going into it just trying to take my life as it comes, a day at a
Yeah.
time, enjoy what I have every day and not enjoy everything I have all the time either. Just not giving myself so much pressure, I think
Mhm.
is the goal for this year, is to just try and find the joy when I can and not put so much expectation on things to be perfect or to be a certain way.
Right. No more new year, new me. This is
Yeah,
just
this
new
is us.
year.
This is
This
us.
I spent the days leading up to the new year with a couple of my childhood girlfriends, and one of them, I've mentioned her before on here. She lost her husband unexpectedly in February of 2024. And so we decided to get together and create vision boards, which I love that kind of stuff.
I do too.
I've done vision boards in the past, and I wanted to be really careful that this vision board was not, again, achievement oriented or just, braced with high expectations, things like that. And so I looked for things that felt playful, because my word for 2025 is play. And I had originally put out on social media that it was to be intentional, but after a really good, much needed therapy session with my therapist, she said, "You know what, Cindy? I don't think that intentionality is the problem. I think it is being playful." And that really resonated with me,
Yeah.
because I am an achiever. I love to have a goal and have a framework for something and check the box, but also that can make me really rigid. I recognize that a lot of times. And so I am totally going to swing the other way and just go for
Play.
play this year.
I
Yeah.
love it. As a play therapist, I love it because children love play and it's so crucial. But as we become older, we stop playing. We just stop
Yeah.
doing those things that we love and make us happy. So I love that that is your word for the year,
Do you
play.
have a word?
I have 0 words, guys, 0 words for the year. I think my word is just, um, I don't know. Maybe creativity, being
Yeah.
creative would be fun. I've been drawing a lot. And I think
Yes.
it's because I play in my playroom with my little kids, and a lot of them want me to draw with them. And some of my little clients are real sweet. They're like, "You're really good at drawing, Miss Sarah."
Yeah.
I've always been hard on myself about stuff, but I found, I don't know, I've just found that it's fun at night to just kind of draw and I don't know, kind of whatever comes to mind. That's been really nice for me to do. And you don't spend a lot of time doing that. So I think, yeah, creativity, play, those are all things that get the other side of your brain moving besides the logical, rigid, linear side. So I think
Mhm.
that those are all wonderful things, which goes into Cindy and I are for this month. Cindy can talk a little bit more, but we are going to focus on creativity
Mhm.
and how people foster that. So we will have some special guests on. That's something we really are hoping to talk more about on the podcast this year.
Yes. Creativity has always been a word, if I'm being totally honest, that has intimidated me. Both creativity and play. And I really understand now more that I think that has a lot to do with that part of myself getting shut off at such an early age. So when people would ask me like, "What do you do for fun?" I'd get this like deer in the headlights look, and it would
I hate that
almost
question.
God, I hate that question so much. Like if you're sitting around in a group and they're doing like an
What's your
icebreaker,
hobby?
my gosh, you want to know a way to make me go into like a freeze is to ask me what my hobby is or like what I do for fun. And I'm
Share
getting
something
better.
about yourself that's interesting.
I do not want any part of groups like that, by the way. You want to know the way to make me clam up the quickest is to ask me, yeah, what's a fun fact about
Fun
myself?
fact.
Yes. Or what do you do for creativity or what's your hobby? Those things have just always been so expectation oriented in my brain.
Hmm.
And then I'm always worried, well, how do I answer that? I don't really know. I don't know what my hobby is. I used to say things like running and reading and cooking. And then I would sit there and think, I don't like to cook. And it's
Hmm.
really hard for me to get into the flow of reading. I enjoy it, but would I necessarily call it a hobby? I don't know. What constitutes a hobby? I don't
I don't know
know.
because in grad school, and this is when I think I just started being real. They would ask that, and I would say sleep, sleep, napping. And they probably were like, "What is wrong?" Love it. I love to nap. That is my hobby. If I can have a
Yes.
hobby, it's napping. And this was before children. Okay. If you want to really know me, yeah, it's not cooking, it's not knitting, it's not glass blowing, it's not not
It's
any of
not
that's
glass
not
blowing.
glass. Although I would love to, I do think that's kind of cool because I'm a Dale Chihuly fan. But
Oh, yeah. Sure.
I mean,
It's
think
not,
about it now. I
yeah,
guess
no.
drawing is like, but taking a nap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you a napper, Cindy? Do you like naps?
I used to be like a professional napper. And in fact,
Okay.
when my kids were little, oh God, I would lay down almost every day and I would
Mhm.
nap whenever they were toddlers. I don't do it so much anymore because I don't know why. I don't know. I just kind of stopped doing it, I guess. You know, sleep is a real tricky thing with me anyway. So I guess there's this kind of fear that if I nap, it'll start to disrupt my nighttime sleep. I
Mhm.
don't know. But yes, if I happen to lay down and can I just fall asleep? Sure.
I
Probably at the
love
drop
it.
of a hat. And I love that. I'm more of like a 20-minute to 30-minute kind of napper.
Which is the healthy kind. That's a
Yeah.
healthy nap,
Yeah.
not like a 5-hour nap where you wake up and you're like, "Where am I?"
Disoriented.
Do you remember when we went to Vegas for my 40th and, like, we had that cabana and there were, like, tons of us there and
Uh-huh.
I fell asleep in the cabana?
Yes.
I swear to you, I can fall asleep anywhere. Everybody's having a good time. It was 11 in the morning too, and I hadn't even had drinks or anything.
Uh-uh.
I'm just telling you, I can nap.
Ah,
I find a place and I lay down.
that's lovely.
Bye.
I
Bye,
aspire to
everyone.
be that way. I really do, you know? And so maybe that's part of this focus of 2025 is again, new year, no expectations, but how can I be more present if that's play, if that's creativity, if that's just surrendering to letting your body just fall asleep because you're tired and because it feels good?
Yeah. And you know what, Cindy? Some cool things that are going to happen on the pod, but Cindy is going every year. She goes for a week or 2 weeks. I don't know how,
I
is it like two
do.
weeks? like 10
Yeah, about a
days,
week and a
14 days.
half. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and she's gonna go to Morocco this year, so she's gonna
I
take the
am.
pod to Morocco. She's going with a friend,
I am.
I think that's a fun play thing. I think travel, you
Yes.
know what? Travel. I'm gonna put
Yeah.
travel in there. Travel is something I wanna do more of. That's
Experiences.
fun.
Yeah.
That's playing. That's
Yes.
playing.
It is playing. We're gonna record from there, so that'll be
I'm
really fun.
excited.
I'm going with a future podcast guest, actually, and I met her on my very first solo female trip. We met on a yoga retreat. She lives in the UK, and she and I are going, and we are spending some nights in Morocco, and we're gonna go camp in the Sahara Desert and ride camels and just do all sorts of crazy things. And
I
so
love
that
it.
I guess that is my closest form of play that I come to. That's my adventurous side. That's where the really playful side of me comes out because I just kind of throw caution to the wind and I'm not reckless by any means, but I am more like, forget it. Nothing matters. Just take the trip, go have the experience, do what makes you happy. So, yeah, you've already got your stuff booked or a lot of your
I
stuff
have
booked
some
for
of
this year
my
too.
stuff booked, yes, but I do think when we were talking, maybe we should change self-care to play. Instead of saying,
Yeah,
"Let's do self-care," let's play. Play.
let's
What makes
play.
you happy? What makes you fun? And I think why it's so uncomfortable is if you've experienced a lot of childhood trauma,
Hmm.
you were in, your fight, flight, freeze, fawn phase. And sometimes play is just uncomfortable. A lot of children didn't get the experience of getting to play because they were just trying to survive. And so
Yes.
I think as adults, we forget how to play, but
Hmm.
we also maybe didn't even have the experiences to know where to even begin with it.
Right.
So I think it's just tapping into what makes you feel good. If you can travel, that's great. If you love like going to a library and just like smelling the books and opening
Hmm.
books, if you want to write, there's just so many different ways that you can play and be creative that are self care. And Cindy and I want to say that it needs to come from an intrinsic place. So
Hmm.
that's just something for you. It's not to please anybody else. So it's not like, oh, cooking for my family makes everybody so happy. No, do you like it? If you love it, then yeah, cook, bake, do what you love. But really, just things that make you feel good and fulfill you, I think is the best thing. Instead of, I need to lose weight or I need to, not drink sodas all the time. If you want the soda, drink the soda. If a Coke with some ice and a show is your form of play, do it.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
cares? You're going to be fine. Okay. You're going to be fine.
I love that you brought up the idea of why play is so hard for some of us because I think you're right there. If you had to assume adult responsibilities from an early age and be really stoic or rigid or just very cautious,
Hmm.
that part of yourself gets really stunted, I think. And when you look at children, their number one responsibility as a child is just to be free to explore their surroundings and to just really inhabit their bodies from a place of non fear, non judgment. And when I think back to my childhood, I did have a lot of creative moments where I would be out on my bike and big imagination. I had a neighbor that lived across the street and we would go on these like adventures and we would make up these stories about these crimes and we would go solve these crimes in the neighborhood. And I mean,
God, I love it. I
it
love
was
it.
crazy. Yeah. I mean, we would just come home with all these stories, and my grandparents would look at me like, oh my gosh, like what's going on? But that was me being imaginative and maybe
Hmm.
somewhat feral. And, it was the 80s. Like nobody cared. We
I
just rode
know.
our bikes all over the neighborhood. And, our parents didn't know what we were up to. But that was what really
So
sticks out in
fun.
my mind is like just being really imaginative and free.
Hmm.
And so when I think of play, maybe that's why I just, kind of couple adventures and travel with that because those were my
Remind you of
formative
that.
years. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And it's
What
fun
about
because
you?
there's just such a freedom to it. Yeah. When I think about my childhood, play was just so fun, and that's probably why I was drawn to be a play therapist. I
Mhm.
mean, it's interesting because we had my mom on the podcast, and my mom kept a lot of my childhood toys because I think as she shared in her episode about how she had to leave her home with all of her
Mhm.
things behind, and that was really traumatic for her. So she never got rid of a lot of my toys as a child. So I have a lot of my old Barbies in the playroom with my kids. And it's funny because they'll take out the old Barbies and some of my old figurines and dolls and stuff. And they're like, this Barbie's knees like pop. And I'm like, Barbies were made. I'm sorry, Barbie was better in the 80s and 90s. Okay. The material for Barbie was better. It just, now granted, I think it's nice that we have more inclusivity with how they look, their
Mhm.
bodies, but the actual material of the Barbie with the popping of the knees and stuff,
Yes.
much better. I don't know what happened, Mattel, but I'm just saying it was much better. Now it's just this plastic stuff. But it's cool to see them play. And when they want to play Barbies, I get so excited because they want me to play with them. And I'm like, yay, I can play Barbies. It's so fun.
Yes.
That's the cool
Isn't
part
it
about being, yeah, I love it.
interesting? Well, okay, and
Mhm.
so I just had a moment where I envisioned you as a child, Sarah, like, playing Barbies, and you probably had all the things and could
Oh,
create these worlds, and I've told you before, and our listeners know, I was raised by
I know.
grandparents from the Depression, and so did you know I did not own a single Barbie? No, you knew this because you bought
Yes,
me the
because I
weird
bought you your
Barbie.
first Barbie, and I'm about to buy you your first Cabbage Patch because my heart breaks that you didn't have a Cabbage Patch doll. Now, is you were a child in the '80s. You deserve the Cabbage Patch doll.
I
I
know.
cannot.
I had a homemade Cabbage Patch doll, okay, and it was very lame, and I was very aware that it was not the
Homemade.
real deal. But I remember it's funny that you mentioned the Barbies because, that just goes to show what was fostered and what wasn't fostered because I had a friend and I would go over to her house and she had the Barbie dream house.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I didn't have a Barbie at all. And so I would go to her house and she would have all these Barbies and this elaborate dream house and the Barbie Jeep and all this stuff. And I would watch her play with Barbies, and I would be like, "What is she doing? I have no idea how to even do this." It was the weirdest
Mhm.
thing, and so I think that's why I struggle so much with play because that was not how I played.
Yeah.
I was more, just of
Outside on
course.
the bike and all that.
Yes, yes, which is so interesting. I wonder if that has a lot to do with, like, why it manifests the way it does now as an adult.
And
Hmm.
that could it's interesting too because playing with Barbies, especially if you play by yourself or with peers, you're learning social skills through how you have the dolls talk with each other. I have clients who work through their own traumas with their own parents and things like that. But it's interesting how that can be a very crucial developmental skill, I think, is how the
Yeah.
Barbies talk with each other. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think everybody had a weird Barbie. I freaking love Weird Barbie. I had to
Yes.
get us the Weird Barbie. She was my favorite in the
She's in my
movie.
closet right now.
Oh, man, and I always liked the brown hair. There was a Barbie named Teresa, if anybody remembers from the '80s and '90s, Teresa, she had brown hair, and I always loved brown hair dolls, like, always.
Really?
I mean, I had the blonde haired Barbie, but I loved when they had the brown hair and it was long, and Teresa, man, she was so cool. And then there was a Hart family. I had the Hart family too, and she had, like, brown and the kids. I was a Barbie
Wow.
girl. I
You
really
were a
was.
Barbie
And my
girl.
daughter wants nothing to do with them. Nothing to do with Barbie. Nothing.
Well, having only boys, we never went through the Barbie stage. They were never really curious. I totally would have bought them Barbies, but we did the superhero thing. And so I would get down on the floor with them when they were little and try to play superheroes with them. But I can even
Mhm.
remember that being a little bit awkward for me because I didn't do that as a child. I would just be like, I don't know. I don't even understand what we're even supposed to be doing. And so that was hard for me as a young mom with young children to play with them, even
Yeah.
was
Well, you're
challenging
tired.
for me. Yeah.
It's still challenging for me. I mean, as a play therapist, when I'm in there, I have to do it.
Yeah.
But when I have my time with my own child, and I have a child who you have to play exactly how, and I was this way as a child too, because I remember my mom being like, Sarah, you got to play on your own because you're telling me everything to say, what Barbie to be, what outfit to wear. And now it's coming back with my own child when I play with her. But when we play My Little Pony, I'm given the script from my child. So it gets real, like, because Olivia will be like, you need to say this, you need to do that. And I'm like, can we just kind of go off the cuff a little bit? But
Nope.
no, there is no going off it has to be exactly. So that can be kind of hard because, and I'll reflect that to her, like, you really have your way of wanting to do this, all the players. play therapy stuff, but I'm
Play
also a
therapy
mom.
language.
I'm not a play therapist all the time. So
No.
sometimes I'm just like, Olivia, I have to clean the kitchen. I don't know what you want Fluttershy to say right now, but
Fluttershy.
I'm sorry. We're a My Little Pony home. Rainbow Dash is supreme in my home. So
Yes.
we do have Equestria girls, which are like Barbies, and I love them. Those are really fun. But
Very fun, very fun.
yes, but I do think it's hard, Cindy, because you didn't get, some of the
Mhm.
traditional things, and you also had a lot of other things going on. So of course that would make it difficult to play. And then
Yes.
as adults, there's so many expectations. And as a mom, you feel like if you're not doing the laundry or getting the household things done and on top of everything else, you feel like play is, I guess you put it in the back burner a little bit because you feel like it's not a priority, but it actually is so crucial for so
Mhm.
many things. So I'm glad we're looking at that this year.
I am too. So I read a book a long time ago by Elizabeth Gilbert called Big Magic, and she talks about how all of us are born with this creative side to ourselves and this need to play, right? And how important it is. But something happens, I think, to a lot of us where along the way we get feedback or criticism about something that we attempt through creativity, and it shuts that part of us down and we
Yeah.
become really performative. And so when my therapist challenged me with this play for 2025, it really dawned on me how hindered I have felt in my life with doing things without a purpose. Like if I wasn't going to be graded on it or it wasn't going to move me forward somehow in my career or my personal life, I would not attempt it because I would be immediately critical. Well, I'm not an artist or I can't create this. I remember I had a middle school art teacher who gave me a C on a clay project because it accidentally blew up in the kiln when they were going to fire it. And I was just, I think, kind of traumatized by that. And so I never
Oh,
would go near any art stuff again. Like it was like, nope, I can't do that. I screwed that up, in the 6th grade. And so I would not create and I would not attempt stuff like that because for fear of failure.
yeah.
So I'm curious, Sarah, as a play therapist, what would you tell an adult who is trying to, I don't know, discover that side of themselves again or rediscover that side of themselves again? That might be kind of a hard question because you work with littles, but
I
what would
do
you
work
tell
with
someone?
littles, but I also work with their parents. And one of the things I tell their parents to do is to not praise their child as much because when we
Ah.
put praise on our child or someone's putting praise on us, we put a value on that. So if you say, "That's beautiful, that's perfect." The next thing I do, I'm
Mm.
going to want it to be beautiful and perfect. So I say, "Of course, we all praise our children. We all are going to say occasionally like, "Great job."
Mhm.
Those kinds of things are like, that's beautiful, but it's putting more of the encouragement of like, you worked really hard on that. Look at all the colors, how you put those colors on there. You made it just the way you wanted it. Really taking it out from what you're seeing towards your child of like, I love it. Be like, you're really proud of that. You worked really hard on that. And that way they're getting that intrinsic sense of motivation
Yeah.
instead of an extrinsic sense. So, but I think as an adult too, it's just trying to foster that within yourself of not having to say it has to be perfect. It's
Mhm.
just how would you speak to your child or a friend is how you need to be speaking to yourself. And if it makes you happy, I think that's good. But if it's something that you feel pressure on, maybe that you need to look at that and see like, why do I feel like it's so hard for me to create this piece of art, or it's so hard for me to sit and write even though I love writing or reading or whatever. I think
Yeah.
maybe looking at that, but it's so hard because once you're an adult and your brain is fully formed, it's hard to break those patterns. So I think
Mhm.
it's just trying things out, seeing what fits, but then also speaking to yourself the way you would want someone to speak to themselves too, like how you would talk to a friend,
Mhm.
and what you would say to a friend. Because I'm sure you wouldn't say to a friend like, "That sucks. You get a C."
Right.
That's horrible. No, you would say, "Wow, that's really, that's cool. You worked really hard on that."
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think also it's like doing cognitive behavioral therapy with yourself where you have a thought and you're instead of saying, I'm terrible, I can't do this, just saying, this is new. I'm learning how to do this. I need to give myself some time. And I'm
Yeah.
doing a lot of that with my own child because she's very much like me because I had that very perfectionistic attitude. I remember I cut up a little knitted thing I made my mom because a little piece of yarn was out and my mom glued it back together and put it on the wall. So I had to stare at it forever. Thanks, mom. Because I got so upset. I was like, I'm terrible. I can never do this again. I would have these huge reactions. And my child does that too. And so I'm really trying with her to say, like, and it's okay to say this when she's like, I can't do this. This is hard. I'm not good at this. I'll say, you're right. You're not good at this. This is something new. This is
Mm,
something new.
mhm.
So let's keep practicing. And then as she gets better, I'm like, see, it's getting better the more you practice it. But I think it's okay to acknowledge, yeah, you're not great at this. It's
Yeah.
hard. You just started. Do you think, Michael Phelps just started, swimming laps and getting gold medals? No, he had to work hard.
Right, right.
Simone Biles, everybody, they had to work, they just didn't go out there and start catapulting. So I think it's like saying, you're right, this is hard. You're
Yeah,
not great at this. This is brand new for you.
sure.
But
It's
the more
supposed
you
to feel
practice, yeah, I don't know.
awkward.
I don't
Yeah,
know if
no,
that
I
answered your question. I don't
it
know.
did. No, it did answer my question. And, I think with play and creativity and not tying it to some sort of outcome where you're
Mhm.
achieving something, I was just struck with this idea of thinking back to my childhood. I don't think anybody ever really sat with me and said, tell me about the colors you chose here, or tell me about how you came up with that story. There was not a lot of curiosity. And again, I know, disclaimer, we always say this, we're not here to fault our parents. They didn't know, they were
Yeah.
just living and whatever, but I just don't think there was a lot of curiosity in my family about the process of things. I think it was so point A to point B. Did you do it? And did you get it done? And did you do it correctly? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Moving on. So even what you said about just, oh, tell me about those colors. You used all
Mhm.
the colors that you wanted or whatever. That's
Mhm.
such a curiosity question that I think we can start practicing with ourselves, those of us that are new to this play and creativity of like really asking ourselves those questions of like the process of things. I think that
Yeah.
takes us out of that linear rigid part of our brain again and puts us back into that right brain of exploration and embodiment. What does this
Uh-huh.
feel like for me to do this versus do you like it? Did I do it right?
Yeah. So if we look at the left side of our brain, it's all the L's, right? Linear,
Mhm.
logical, linguistic, all of those things. They're all on the left side. We want to access the right side. Children live in the right side of the brain when they're younger. A lot of them live in that area. They also live in the lower part of their brain. So they're living in that limbic region.
Mhm.
But as they get older, they're just conditioned, right? Like in school, you need to color it this way. I just had a mom tell me how her daughter's homework was sent home because she didn't color the picture, the colors they were supposed to. This is kindergarten. And I
On.
thought, what does it matter what color your child picks? But see, that's the problem is, and that's where you see kids conditioned as they get older and older is they have to do it a certain way. So then the creativity starts getting taken out of it, the
Mhm.
play and creativity, because you're just doing what you're told needs to be done correctly. So
Yeah.
I have to do it this way. The sky has to be blue. Does it? Does the sky have to be blue? One of my best friends always tells me this story about as a child, the preschool called and had a big talk with her mom because she refused to color the sky the correct color. She saw it a different way.
Mhm.
And I love her because she has an amazing position, lives in New York City, very successful, and she's always been very like outspoken, which I love about her. But I just think it's interesting because from a young age we're telling kids you need to use this color, you need to do it this way. And there's such a freedom in letting kids just express themselves and play without putting so much expectation and putting what we expect on them. So and I'm not saying it works for every child because some children they need more rigidity with their play,
Mhm.
but telling them, "Oh, you need to say this, you need to do this, you need, how I was saying my daughter does it to me. That's okay for her to do it to me, but as the adult, I need to follow her play and what she's doing because that's how her imagination is building. But yeah, in school, you think about it, we're conditioned as we get older and older and older. And then they start taking the play away, right? Once you leave elementary school, there's no more school parties really.
Yeah.
There's none of that fun play. You get to pick band or choir and all that, but then you're told this is what you have to play, this is what you have to do. It
Mhm.
just keeps getting more intense as you get older, so the play gets placed in the back burner, if that makes sense. So I think that that's
Yeah.
where a lot of adults struggle because we just forget how to do it.
Mm. Yeah. We don't access it and it's there, but we haven't had a lot of practice with it, just doing it and dropping from our head back into our body, I think is something that can be really super challenging. And if we struggle with anxiety or depression and we have more access to the left brain, trying to think your way out of those
Mhm.
spirals can be very difficult and just almost exacerbates it. And I think that's what I'm really trying to work on for 2025 is how do I acknowledge that I'm overanalyzing something or being really rigid about something and recognize that and then shift over into a space of play. And I was listening to another podcast recently where they were talking about this very thing. And if you're looping and you're anxious or you're in a depressive state, instead of asking how can I fix this or how can I get out of this, ask yourself what can I create? And it shifts you from your left brain to your right brain, and I really love that idea. So that's going to be something that I'm going to be focusing on this year is what can I create versus how can I outthink this or
Yeah.
fix this, because I think that keeps you outside of your body and it keeps you in your headspace versus
Mhm.
really feeling it and feeling your way through something. And again, it's not avoiding, but it's just a different way to think about moving from the outside, the parameter of the house to inhabiting the house, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
no, I love
So,
that.
yeah.
And I think that's too why if people are listening and they're uncomfortable with play or they don't know how to get started and you're in therapy, ask your therapist if they do sand tray. Because
Mm,
sand tray is
yes.
a great way to start a creative outlet. You get to pick from little figures,
Mhm.
there's different prompts, but it's fun because you can just kind of place things in the sand and create a little world or whatever you want to do with that prompt. But I feel like that's a really fun way to kind of introduce play and creativity back. Um,
Yeah,
with adults. And so it's just not traditional talk therapy. And I know Cindy, she loves sand tray. I do sand
I
tray
do.
too with my littles, but I know Cindy has actually gone to a bunch of workshops for it.
Yeah.
And so it's fun finding it. I think it's fun, like just buying the little figurines for it too. It's really
I
fun
love
to
it.
I love it too. It's so cool. But
Yeah,
yeah, and I think that that's an easy way to bridge the gap if you struggle with play and
sure.
you're in therapy and you want to work through some things. Whereas in talk therapy, it can seem very invasive and you can feel very confronted sometimes and it
Mhm.
can be uncomfortable, which is why play works great for kids and adolescents or activity therapy and play
Yeah.
because it's difficult for kids to just look you in the eye. It's
Mhm.
not a sign of disrespect, it's just uncomfortable for them.
Yeah.
It can feel very shaming, and
Mhm.
so it's an outlet where they can express themselves in a safe way, as
Right.
opposed to just talking straightforward, which can be uncomfortable. And that's for a lot of adults too. So, I
Yes,
mean,
yes. And speaking of, so January, it's a shorter month for us because we took the first week off,
I know we
and
did.
we have 2 podcast guests, for this month of January, and I'm really excited because one
Me
of
too.
them, without giving away too much detail, found a way to take her own struggles with anxiety, depression, and create. And so she's going to be coming on next week and sharing her story with us and how she took these challenges and then shifted it over into products specifically related to mental health. And so I'm really excited to have her on and hear her story about how she turned something really challenging into something really beautiful. And then our other guest that's coming on, I've known her for a really long time. Our kids grew up together. We met when I was living out in Las Vegas. And without giving too much away from her story, she creates beautiful pottery. She does this as a way to help her with her anxiety. And it's just a great hands on way for her to take what she's feeling and actually create. And she's inspired me too. I really want to try out the pottery wheel and
Go
just
get
see
back in there. You get back in there,
and
Cindy.
just try it out and just try it out. So our two guests for January are focused on play and creativity and how to shift out of this left brain linear
Mhm.
headspace and into the right brain.
More holistic
Yeah,
and fun.
experiences,
Mhm.
play. So I
Yes.
think it's going to be great.
We're gonna play this year, guys, and
We
also
are.
some of the other changes we're gonna do this year is we are very, female oriented over here, so we're gonna talk all about a lot of women's issues, especially, like menopause, women's health issues, things like that. We also wanna
Yeah,
delve into some pop culture because we have thoughts on a lot of things pop culture.
we do.
Um, and Cindy and I hope to also have a retreat that we will
Yes.
host for a few women. So we're hopeful to get that off the ground and then do some presentations and things like
Yeah.
that. So we will keep everybody up to date. But we definitely just want everyone to just have a year full of play and what feeds you, what makes you feel good. I think that that's really what we want 2025 to be about. So
Yeah, I agree. So play, creativity. There's a lot to look forward to. Keep and just be looking for some announcements about our retreat that's going to be coming up later this year. We're really excited. On that retreat, it'll be a limited number of spaces just because the resort that we're looking at is smaller and we really want it to be a personalized experience. And we will have some play on that retreat as
oh
well.
yes, that is my place. That I would like. Oh,
uh,
I love that place.
it's
Okay.
just such a gorgeous place out in Palm Springs. And so stay tuned for that. And again, it'll be a limited number of participants of women only.
Mhm.
And not that we're not going to have some male focused things on the podcast this year or even some male guests, but for the most part, the whole reason why we started this was because of the masking and how it affects women
Mhm.
differently than men. And we just really want to stick to the original purpose of why we created the pod in the first place. So
Yes.
we're excited
Yay. It's gonna
and
be a good year.
it is going to be a great year, you guys. So take care of yourselves, play, create,
And
and we'll
yeah, we'll
see
see
you
you guys
back.
next week.
All right.
Happy
Thanks, everybody.
2025.
Yes. See you later. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If this podcast resonated with you, it would mean so much to us if you'd be willing to take a few minutes of your time and do a couple of things. First, can you please follow or subscribe to the Unmasking podcast? This is helpful for you because you'll never miss an episode. So, to do this, go to the Unmasking podcast show page on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click follow. While you're there, if you'd be willing to give us a 5-star rating and share an episode that you loved with a friend, we would be so grateful. The Unmasking podcast is created and hosted by Cindy Payne and Sarah Vaught. And you can also find more information by logging on to our website, theunmaskingpodcast.com. There you will see opportunities to subscribe as well as apply to be a guest on our show. As always, we're so grateful for you, and we hope you join us next week for a new episode. Thank you.